The first time you hear it, it sounds almost absurd. Tie a red thread on the door handle. Yet this simple image carries a weight that has traveled across generations, cultures, and faiths, a crimson whisper woven into the threshold of a home. Before we go deeper, I want you to do something powerful. Comment the phrase, "Prosperity begins with protection." There is a reason for this. Writing it anchors the message in your mind, turning a passive idea into an intentional act. And intention is the hidden engine behind every form of blessing. Now imagine it again, the red thread resting quietly against the metal of the door handle, barely moving, almost shy in its simplicity. To the untrained eye, it looks like nothing more than a string, but to those who understand ancient symbolism, it is a guardian, a silent sentinel. A reminder that prosperity is not just something we attract, it is something we safeguard. Across Jewish history, colors were never chosen at random, and objects were never merely objects. Everything carried purpose, everything carried memory, and everything, especially something tied to a doorway, carried protection. Because the doorway is not just wood and hinges, it is the thin line separating the world outside from the sanctuary inside. It is where energies shift, intentions cross, and the unseen becomes tangible. That is why, for centuries, small symbols like threads, knots, or markings were placed at entrances, not to invoke magic, but to awaken awareness, to say, "Here begins my home. Here begins my peace. Here begins what is mine to protect." The red thread is one of the simplest symbols, yet its meaning is layered like history itself. And here is where curiosity begins to unfold. Why red? Why a thread? Why the door? Each choice hides a story, and each story reveals a principle that red has never been a quiet color. It announces itself. It breathes. It pulses with an ancient energy that civilizations across the world instinctively recognized as life itself. Yet in Jewish symbolism, red carries an additional layer of meaning, one that reaches far beyond simple aesthetics. To understand why a humble thread becomes a guardian of prosperity, you must first understand why red was chosen above all other colors. Red is the color of vitality, the color of blood, the color of movement. It represents the spark that keeps the world turning. And more importantly, it is the color that interrupts negativity before it crosses a threshold. In ancient traditions, red was believed to draw the eye instantly, disrupting harmful intentions, both external and internal. It breaks patterns. It stops the invisible before it becomes visible. The Talmud and various midrashic writings reference red not as ornamentation, but as a boundary, a warning, a declaration. This space is protected, not by force, but by awareness, not by superstition, but by symbolism that shapes behavior, emotion, and expectation. The thread itself may be small, but the color transforms it into something bold. Red stands out against the neutral tones of a door, reminding anyone who approaches, whether a guest or the homeowner themselves, that this home is conscious, this home is intentional, this home is guarded, not out of fear, but out of reverence for the blessings it holds. The psychological impact is subtle but powerful. A mind that sees red pauses, it recalibrates, it becomes alert in a way that amplifies gratitude and minimizes carelessness. And prosperity requires exactly that kind of alertness. Through centuries of Jewish diaspora, red became a symbol carried in pockets, tied in garments, wrapped around wrists, or placed at entrances. It was a color of identity and resilience, bold enough to be remembered, humble enough to go unnoticed by those who did not understand its depth. Families used it not as a charm, but as a message. We protect what we love. We honor what sustains us. We acknowledge the forces we cannot see by strengthening the choices we can make. And so the red thread at the door handle gains its first layer of meaning. It visually interrupts anything that might disturb the prosperity of the home. But this is only the foundation. The symbolism deepens further when we understand the role of thresholds, those silent lines where the outside world ends and the inner world begins. Because in Jewish thought, the doorway is never just an architectural detail, it is a spiritual border, and what crosses that border matters more than most people realize. A doorway is never merely an entrance. In Jewish thought, it is a threshold between worlds, a place where intentions shift, where the spiritual and the ordinary overlap, where the unseen becomes quietly present. To understand the red thread fully, we must step into this ancient understanding of thresholds. A doorway is a moment frozen in architecture. It is where you pause before stepping inside, where you leave behind the noise of the street, where you prepare to enter a sanctuary shaped by your values, your rituals, your peace. Jewish tradition has always treated this moment with reverence. The mezuzah is the clearest example. Fixed on the doorpost, it is not a decoration.
It is a declaration that the home within is aligned with divine purpose, ethical living, and awareness. But beyond the religious symbol lies a profound principle. The doorway must be marked with intention. It must be claimed spiritually and emotionally. It must be recognized as the first guardian of everything that unfolds inside. That is why, even in folk tradition, people placed symbols at entrances long before mezuzot were standardized. A threshold needed protection because it represented transition, and transitions are vulnerable moments. In ancient villages, red markings were sometimes placed above doors during dangerous seasons, or tied near entrances to mark homes of celebration or mourning. It was not the color alone, but the deliberate act of marking that mattered. By designating a threshold, one declared, "What enters here must be worthy. What leaves here must be intentional."
The door became a filter for energy, emotion, and behavior. And a filter changes everything. The red thread tied to the door handle fits perfectly within this lineage. It is not the object itself that holds the power, but the awareness it triggers. When your hand reaches for the door and touches the red thread, you experience a moment of pause, a moment to decide what you are bringing into your home. Are you carrying stress from work, anger from the street, doubts about the day? Or are you prepared to enter with gratitude, peace, and clarity, the true ingredients of prosperity? In Jewish households, prosperity is not defined by wealth alone, but by harmony, purpose, and blessing. And harmony requires boundaries that protect what is fragile. A home filled with prosperity begins with a threshold that is respected. The red thread signals that respect. It quietly guards the transition, reminding you that the shift from outside to inside is sacred. But if the doorway is a threshold of intention, then the red thread becomes something even greater, a silent guardian whose presence shapes the space within. And this leads to the next revelation, how a simple thread can stand watch over the entire household, protecting the prosperity that lives inside. Picture the red thread again, resting lightly against the door handle. It does not lock the door. It does not warn intruders. It does not radiate force or aggression. And yet, it protects, not by power, but by presence, not by strength, but by symbolism. In Jewish folklore, the most effective guardians were often the simplest ones, the ones that worked quietly, shaping the atmosphere of a home without ever being noticed by outsiders.
The red thread belongs to this lineage of subtle guardianship. A home is vulnerable not only to physical threats, but also to emotional ones. Envy, conflict, resentment, scattered energy. These invisible forces can drain prosperity more quickly than any financial misstep. Jewish wisdom teaches that prosperity is a delicate ecosystem, dependent on the harmony within the household. If peace is disturbed, abundance becomes fragile. That is why protective symbols were placed at entrances, not to block people, but to block the energies people might carry with them. The red thread becomes a filter of intention. When someone approaches the door, the vivid color draws the eye, creating a moment of micro-awareness. That moment shifts the energy. It softens the approach. It calms impulsive emotions. Even visitors with scattered thoughts or heavy hearts unconsciously adjust their posture, their tone, their presence. The home remains guarded by this silent pause. For the inhabitants, the effect is even deeper.
Each time the thread brushes their fingers, it becomes a tactile reminder. Enter this home with peace. Leave your burdens outside. Bring only what nourishes. These tiny ritual moments accumulate, shaping behavior over time. Slowly, the home becomes a sanctuary not by chance, but by intention repeated day after day. And prosperity thrives in sanctuaries. It needs a protected space, emotionally, spiritually, even psychologically. The red thread announces that the household is not run by chaos, but by consciousness. It tells the family itself that this place deserves care. It reinforces the idea that prosperity must not only be achieved, but maintained, sheltered from corrosive energies. In some families, the thread was replaced every few months, symbolizing renewal. In others, it remained until it naturally frayed, marking the quiet passage of seasons. But in every case, it served the same purpose: to make the home feel watched over, not by an outside force, but by the family's own commitment to harmony and abundance. Yet the power of the red thread does not end at protection. It also prepares the heart and mind to receive prosperity, teaching that abundance is not only a gift, but a responsibility. And this leads us deeper into the wisdom that prosperity itself must be guarded like a flame. Prosperity is often imagined as something that simply arrives, an unexpected guest, a fortunate wind, a blessing that drops gently into a person's life.
But Jewish wisdom teaches something far more profound. Prosperity is not merely received, it is protected. Before abundance can flourish, the vessel that holds it must be strong, intentional, and shielded from what drains it. And this is where the red thread begins to reveal its deeper purpose. Prosperity is not just financial. It includes harmony, emotional stability, clarity of purpose, healthy relationships, spiritual alignment, and the quiet joy of living a meaningful life. Each of these forms of abundance can be abundant one moment and fragile the next. All it takes is a moment of discord, a careless word, a burst of negativity, and the balance begins to crumble. That is why ancient teachings insisted that before anyone prays for more, they must first protect what they already have. The red thread symbolizes this principle elegantly.
It stands at the doorway like a reminder that prosperity is a sacred flame, and as with any flame, wind can extinguish it if the space around it is not shielded. The thread tells you, guard your peace, guard your gratitude, guard your focus. Do not let every emotion from the outside world step into your living room. Do not let every voice shape the atmosphere of your home. Do not allow prosperity to be diluted by the noise of the world. Inside Jewish households, prosperity was treated with respect because it was understood as a partnership between human effort and divine blessing, between discipline and intention. A person could work tirelessly, but without the right environment, their prosperity would slip through their fingers like water through an open hand. Conversely, a home anchored in harmony and purpose could elevate even the simplest income into a life of abundance.
That is why protective rituals mattered, not for superstition, but for psychology. They trained the mind to see prosperity as something worth preserving, something delicate enough to require boundaries. The red thread is a physical anchor for that idea. When you return home after a difficult day, it whispers, "Do not bring the storm inside." When you leave the house, it reminds you, "Carry your blessings with intention." These small shifts create a cumulative effect that shapes the rhythm of life. And just when you think the red thread is only symbolic, another layer unfolds. Because beyond protection and prosperity lies an even greater function: how objects like this become tools for reshaping the mind itself. The red thread does more than guard prosperity. It changes the one who ties it. Ritual objects are often misunderstood.
People imagine they rely on mystical forces or hidden powers, but Jewish wisdom teaches something far more subtle and transformative. The purpose of a ritual object is not to change the world around you, but to change you. And the red thread on the door handle, though simple in appearance, becomes a powerful anchor for the mind, a cue that reshapes habits, thoughts, and emotional patterns every time you encounter it. Human beings are creatures of repetition. We live in cycles, rhythms, patterns that quietly dictate our mood and decisions. A doorway is one of the places where these patterns repeat daily. We cross it dozens of times, leaving home in the morning, returning in the evening, stepping out with plans, stepping back in with experiences. Each crossing is a moment in motion, and motion often carries emotion with it. We rush, we worry, we anticipate, we remember.
All of these thoughts swirl around us like dust, and unless something interrupts the automatic flow, those thoughts come inside with us. This is where the red thread becomes a psychological instrument. The flash of its vibrant color forces a tiny pause, a reset, a momentary shift from autopilot to awareness. In Jewish practice, these micro-pauses have always been essential. A blessing before eating, a mezuzah at the door, a candle lit at dusk. Small gestures that anchor the mind to purpose, gratitude, and presence. The red thread belongs to this same category of sacred interruptions. Modern cognitive science confirms what ancient wisdom already knew. Small, consistent cues placed in meaningful locations can reshape behavior dramatically. They trigger mindfulness, reduce stress, enhance emotional regulation, and create a sense of continuity between intention and action.
The thread is not a charm, it is a habit builder. Every time your fingers brush against it, your mind shifts from reactive to reflective. You remember to leave your burdens outside. You remember to enter your home with clarity. You remember that prosperity is something you participate in, not something that happens by accident. Over weeks and months, these micro moments accumulate. They create emotional stability. They ground the spirit. They sharpen boundaries. They turn the home into a place where blessings are nurtured rather than suffocated. And slowly, the person who tied the red thread begins to change. They become more aware of what they carry, more careful with their words, more intentional with their energy. The red thread becomes an external reminder that shapes an internal transformation.
But if ritual objects shape the mind, then the red thread also connects to something even older, the stories woven through generations, where knots were tied not just for protection, but for memory, identity, and continuity. And it is in those stories that the thread reveals its most ancestral meaning. Long before books were common and teachings could be written down, wisdom traveled through families by thread, by fabric, by the quiet movement of hands weaving meaning into the ordinary. Jewish storytelling has always held a deep reverence for the simple act of tying a knot. A knot is more than a twist of thread. It is a symbol of connection, of continuity, of holding together what must not be lost. And the red thread at the door handle carries this ancient inheritance in every loop and pull.
In old villages and crowded cities alike, women would sit together at dusk, their fingers working instinctively, tying threads meant to protect children, bless homes, or mark moments of transition. These knots were never random. They represented promises, hopes, and prayers woven into something tangible. A mother might tie a knot for a child leaving on a long journey. A grandmother might knot a thread for a newborn's cradle. Each knot said, "You are protected. You are remembered. You are part of something larger than yourself." The red thread became one of the most beloved symbols within this tradition, not only because of the color's protective strength, but because knots themselves carried powerful metaphorical meaning. A knot cannot be easily undone. It endures. It resists pulling forces. It binds one moment to the next.
When placed on a doorway, the knot announces that the home is connected to its past, rooted in its ancestry, and strengthened by generations of intention. Stories circulated throughout Jewish communities, telling of threads tied before weddings, threads tied during difficult seasons, threads tied for courage or clarity. These were not magical objects. They were reminders, physical expressions of spiritual resilience. In times when oppression, migration, or uncertainty threatened the stability of life, the red thread served as a declaration that families could still hold on to their inner world, even when the outer world felt unstable. What makes this tradition even more moving is that knots were often tied in silence. There was no spectacle, no grand ceremony. The power was in the quietness,
in the knowledge that someone cared enough to create a small symbol of protection.
Many households continued the practice without fully remembering its origins, yet they felt its emotional truth. A knot is a promise that does not break. A thread on the door handle echoes this lineage. It says, "This home remembers where it came from. This home honors those who came before. This home ties its prosperity to its identity." And as this meaning unfolds, the red thread transforms from mere ornament to heirloom, an object that binds the present to the wisdom of the past. But the tradition does not end in history. In the modern world, the red thread takes on yet another role, one that speaks not only to spirituality, but also to emotional well-being. The ancient symbol becomes a surprisingly powerful tool for mindfulness, grounding, and mental clarity.
In the modern world, people often search for complex systems to restore balance, apps for mindfulness, books on productivity, elaborate routines meant to calm an overstimulated mind. Yet ancient wisdom quietly reminds us that sometimes the most powerful tools are the simplest ones. The red thread tied to a door handle is one such tool. It survives across centuries not because of superstition, but because it fulfills a purpose that is timeless. It brings the mind back to presence. Today, many feel overwhelmed the moment they cross their own thresholds. They carry work stress into the living room, digital noise into the bedroom, and emotional exhaustion into every space that was meant to restore them. Prosperity suffers, not because abundance is unavailable, but because the inner world is too cluttered to receive it.
The red thread steps into this modern chaos as a surprising anchor, a bridge between ancient grounding practices and contemporary emotional needs. When the vivid thread catches your attention, it interrupts the mental storms we now call overstimulation. It pulls you into the moment before stepping inside, asking you silently, "Who are you as you enter this home? What energy are you bringing with you? What burden can you leave outside?" This kind of mindfulness, practiced consistently, becomes transformative. The doorway becomes a psychological checkpoint, a moment of self-awareness embedded into daily routine. Rituals like these are not primitive, they are deeply human. A consistent cue at a meaningful place activates neural pathways associated with calm, clarity, and emotional regulation. The red thread becomes a signal that your home is not an extension of the world's chaos, but a sanctuary with its own rhythm. You feel permission to breathe differently when you touch the handle. You step inside with more intention. You begin to associate the doorway with grounding, and over time, this changes your internal landscape. In Jewish tradition, the home is the center of spiritual life, a place of peace, teaching, gratitude, and continuity. But in modern life, those qualities must be actively protected. The red thread becomes a portal between the busy mind and the settled soul. It trains you to pause before reacting, to choose before entering, to protect the emotional architecture that prosperity depends on. This ancient object finds new purpose in today's world because humanity still needs boundaries, still needs rituals, still needs reminders of who they aspire to be. And as you integrate the thread into your life, you begin to understand that it is not merely a symbol of protection, it is a tool for self-regulation, emotional clarity, and mental grounding. Yet, for all its modern applications, the red thread still holds one more gift, the ability to turn intention into practice. And this is where its wisdom becomes practical, guiding you to use it not as superstition, but as a meaningful daily ritual. Using the red thread is not about performing a mystical act or attempting to control fate. It is about creating a moment, an intentional, meaningful moment that shifts your awareness and aligns your home with the energy you want to cultivate. Jewish wisdom has always understood that symbols hold power only when the heart behind them is sincere. So if you choose to place a red thread on your door handle, it must carry authentic meaning, not empty ritual. The first step is simplicity. Choose a red thread made of natural material, cotton or wool, nothing extravagant. The beauty of this practice lies in its humility.
Hold the thread in your hands before tying it. For a few quiet seconds, reflect on what you want your home to receive and what you want it to release. This reflection is the true essence of the ritual. The physical knot merely seals the intention you form in your mind. When you tie the thread onto the door handle, tie it with purpose. Each loop can represent something: gratitude, peace, protection, prosperity. These are not spells, they are reminders. You can speak a phrase softly if you wish. May only what nourishes enter here. Or, let peace and clarity guide this home. But the words are optional. What matters is the mindfulness you bring to the moment.
Place the thread on the inside handle if you want the ritual to focus on inner harmony, what you bring into the home each time you enter. Place it on the outside handle if your intention is to set a tone for visitors and create a boundary that filters energy before it crosses into your space. Many choose to tie threads on both sides, symbolizing harmony flowing inward and outward. Over time, the thread may fade or fray. Do not rush to replace it. Let it age naturally. When it finally looks ready to be renewed, remove it gently and thank it, not because the object has power, but because you do, because your awareness has shifted, because your home has grown under your intention. Then tie a new thread, carrying forward the lessons of the old one. This practice is not about superstition or fear.
It is about cultivating a home where prosperity feels safe, where peace feels welcomed, where the flow of daily life is anchored by small acts of mindfulness. The thread becomes a physical expression of your commitment to protecting the emotional and spiritual atmosphere of your home. And as the ritual takes root, something remarkable begins to happen. Prosperity feels less like something you chase and more like something that naturally arrives because the space you have created is ready to hold it. Yet there remains one final piece to this ancient wisdom, a closing reflection that brings together protection, prosperity, and the deeper meaning of thresholds. Prosperity is not an accident. It is a rhythm, a posture, a way of moving through the world with awareness and gratitude.
And as this journey into Jewish wisdom comes full circle, the red thread tied to a door handle reveals itself not as a relic of the past, but as a living reminder of a truth that transcends time. Abundance flourishes where peace is protected. The threshold of a home is more than a passage. It is a place where intention becomes reality. Every time you cross it, you decide what kind of energy you bring with you and what kind you leave behind. In this way, the simple red thread becomes a teacher, one that speaks softly but transforms deeply. When you step inside and see the thread sway gently from the handle, you are reminded that prosperity begins not with accumulation, but with clarity. You remember that harmony is a choice renewed daily, and that blessings thrive where boundaries are honored.
This ritual, humble in form, reinforces the idea that you are the guardian of your own inner sanctuary. Jewish wisdom has always taught that the home is the heart of spiritual life, not a place of perfection, but a place of intention. The thread, the knot, the doorway, these become symbols of a life lived with purpose and reverence. And as the days pass, you begin to notice that prosperity feels different. It no longer feels distant or fragile. It becomes natural, steady, grounded. The environment you have shaped welcomes it, nurtures it, allows it to grow without fear of being scattered by negativity or disorder. The red thread becomes a quiet contract between your present self and the person you are becoming, someone who honors their space, their peace, and their blessings. This final chapter is not a conclusion, but an invitation. An invitation to carry forward the essence of this wisdom into your daily life, to treat your threshold as sacred, to approach your home with intention, to remember that prosperity is not merely wealth, but the harmony you cultivate, the values you live, and the peace you protect. And so, as you stand before your door, hand on the handle, the red thread brushing softly against your fingers, you step into a space transformed, not by magic, but by meaning. A space shaped by ancient practice, yet fully alive in the present. A space ready to hold prosperity in all its forms. Now, let this wisdom travel further. Share it, reflect on it, and carry it into your life with the same simplicity and strength as the thread itself.